Well, welcome back. So the last session we did a practice of looking at our energy and allowing our attention to sweep through our body. And this time we're going to do a more of a resting practice, a natural rest practice. One of the practices that we do a lot with Scott Killaby's work is to pay attention to the mind and what's happening with thought, and to rest our attention in our body. So it's a very focused resting practice. So let's start right into that. Just notice what's happening in your body right now and decide if you would like to lie down for this or if you'd like to sit up. And if you could, these are always nice to do lying down, or supported back on a chair, something like that, so that your body can really relax. And you can have your camera on, you can have it off, whatever you like. I'm recording it, but it's just recording me. It's not recording anyone else. So you're not going to be showing on the recording. So it's totally up to you. And as we check in, the first thing that we do is just really notice what our experience is in this moment. What's happening in your body right now, your breath, your thoughts. Notice your situation. And sometimes we really enjoy what we find when we check in, other times not so much. Of course, that's natural as well. Sometimes we have a lot going on, or we have something in our body that's painful, or we're not well in some way. Other times there's more of a mental grab of something. We're worried about somebody, or we're ruminating about something. And other times things are quite calm. So we can really notice that these the experience that we have within is quite changeable. So with Scott Killaby's work, one thing that I learned from him that I hadn't really learned from 20 years of meditation was the really specific way that thoughts show up as either words or pictures. I guess we noticed that, but I hadn't really paid attention to it in that way. And so when we're watching thought, which we'll do a certain amount of in this practice, it's very helpful to see that thoughts just arrive. We don't plan our thoughts. You couldn't predict in 18 minutes what exactly is going to be going on in your mind. There's a machine in there in our mind that generates thoughts, and it doesn't do it randomly. They're very connected with our experience, with our fears, with what really triggers us. So it's very connected with our lifetime of experience. And it's also connected with whatever it is that's happening right now. If you're in a noisy environment, that'll be going on. If you're in a calm, peaceful place, then all of these things really affect us. And we have really three kinds of thoughts that come through the mind. When we're doing a mindfulness practice around thought, we'll notice that some of them are neutral. They just come in, they have whatever life they have, and then they go. They don't really have much of an impact. We don't tense up against them. We don't feel pleasure. They just kind of come and go. And then we have thoughts of someone we love, or a beautiful sunset or a bird song or something. And we often just kind of relax. Our shoulders drop. We feel happier. We focus on that for a moment. And we also have thoughts that create some kind of a negative response or a contracted kind of a response in our body. They might spin a whole train of thoughts. So, what we're going to do in the relaxation is really just rest and look and see what it is that's coming up. And we'll keep coming back to that. There's a space in which this is arising. And we'll look at that as well. So, just right now, if you were to tune into your experience and watch your thoughts, the first thing we notice is that there's some space there. So as soon as we start watching thought, there's usually a gap, there's some silence. And then if we watch for long enough, a thought will come in. Thoughts come into our attention in the area of our brain, somewhere behind our forehead usually. So let's watch the flow of thought for a bit. Just rest with that. And when we're able to maintain that witness perspective, then we're able to notice the gaps between breath. Sorry, the gaps between thoughts. So as we're noticing the gaps between thoughts, we're just kind of sitting there doing nothing. And that actually makes us a little bit more susceptible to thoughts. Thoughts come up and we're a little bit more interested in them perhaps than we would be if we were focused on something else. It's part of our mind that gets kind of bored, wants something to look at, pay attention to. And then in comes our thoughts. Often not very interesting, actually. Often related to the past, maybe to some experiences that we've had that have created this feeling that we're not connected, or that we're not protected, we're not connected with our family, we're not safe. There's all kinds of experiences that we've had. And it's like when we have a spare moment in our mind, the brain just kind of brings them all back. Well, you better not forget about this. And there's kind of an innocence behind that, in that it's just our defense mechanisms trying to make sure that we're safe and that we survive. there's not a lot of nuanced understanding at that level in our brain. A primitive brain is really just set to react to everything just in case. So when we are able to observe our thought, we might see very clearly at times that what's happening in the thought stream isn't actually anything we need to worry about. It's not a thought we need to entertain. And what happens over the years is that when we were children, we didn't really have the brain development even to understand that that wasn't something that we needed to see that way, or if we're powerless to change something, which we usually are as children, that feeling can just carry over into our adult lives. So we have a lot of thoughts in our mind that actually are not helpful at all and that aren't true. We could just notice that when thoughts are coming in, if we're able to just be mindfully observant of them. Then we can see that a lot of them are not helpful. They're not true. They're actually creating a lot of stress. So let's stay tuned into that as well as we're watching thoughts come in. We have a lot of habits in the mind, not all of which are helpful, some of which create a lot of suffering. And it's very helpful to watch those and pay attention just to see what's going on with that. And then the great thing about how our mind works is that when we give it something to do, something to focus on, then often it will focus on that. So the breath is it's a really good thing to focus on. It's a very effective way to calm the mind down because it also works with our body and our nervous system. So let's take some time as we're doing this resting practice to focus in on the body and the breath and see the effect that that has on the thoughts in our mind. So again, we're paying attention to the thoughts in the mind, noticing what comes in, and we're also directing them. Saying for a while now, we would like to focus on the breath. And of course, the breath occurs in the body, so we're focusing on the body a bit as well. But bring your attention to your stomach. And notice what movement is happening in your body with your breath. If you relax your belly, most likely your breath will become diaphragmatic, which means that there's not much movement in the upper chest. The movement more comes through the stomach. The diaphragm flattens as the air comes in and the stomach rises. And then as we breathe out, everything settles back towards the spine. The stomach softens. So give this focus to the mind that you want to observe your breath at the navel center in your stomach area. And as you're breathing out, notice how it softens. You could even put your hand on your stomach if you liked, just to focus on that rhythm and the pace. As you breathe in, there's that sense of expansion. The body is making room for the air to come into the lungs, for the lungs to expand. So, for the next couple of minutes, let's set our intention to focus just on that movement and on the intake and the outtake of the breath. As we breathe out, really focus on how the belly softens. And then see if you could allow there to be a continuous movement and flow of breath. As you finish breathing out, let your body decide it's time to breathe in, and then just watch as it does that. There's a turnaround or a transition in the breath. And then when you have a nice full inhale, you've got enough new breath, then let yourself go right into the exhalation. So this is a different pattern of breathing than what we might have. We might have a stressful pattern of breathing where we breathe in, kind of hold it, or maybe where we breathe out and we don't really take in a new breath right away. So for a couple of minutes, allow yourself to be very consistent with your breath. Just at the end of the exhale, move right into the inhalation. Keep your attention focused on the breath. As soon as you've got your air, then let it go. Let the stale air leave your body. Let your body relax and soften. And notice what's happening in your mind. Maybe the thoughts that were intrusive are a little bit quieter. Your mind has something to focus on when you're focusing on the breath. Exhale, let yourself really soften into that exhale. And as you inhale, if the stomach is very soft, there's no resistance to the inhale. So you can take a nice deep inhalation. And then let it go. And notice if this pattern and this focus is stabilizing for your mind. Notice if your thoughts become quieter, a bit more in the background. And that's an observation too. We're watching the breath, we're watching thoughts. And then notice the space that the body is occupying. A few minutes ago, we were looking at the space where thought arrives and where it goes. comes in, we have a train of thoughts, or the thought just dissipates. So that's part of the space of the body, that area in the head around in where the brain is, where thoughts come in. Notice the rest of the space in your body. And in particular, with the breath, we're breathing in the air from outside of our body. Then we're breathing out the air from inside the body, putting it back out into the space in front of us. So we're having an exchange there. And our bodies are breathing and moving. So the empty space just above our belly, as we finish our exhalation, is now filled with our body as we breathe in. And the only way that we can tell that that's going on is by the sense perceptions of perhaps our clothes, the muscles lengthening as we breathe out or as we breathe in, the softening as we breathe out. So it's kind of a curious thing that we often don't really notice, the space that our body is in and the space all around us. And there's quite a bit going on in that space. We look at the space that our head is occupying, for instance, there's a lot going on in that area. If we have our eyes closed, there's not much visual activity, although we might be seeing images still. We have space, empty space inside our head, above the tongue and in the throat and the sinuses. We can sense that only through perceptions of pain, for instance. If we have a sinus headache or congestion, we can sense this empty space in the nose by the feeling of the air that flows over it. We have empty space in our ear canals. And then within this space, we have a lot of sensations. Some of them are the feeling of clothes on the skin or something like that. And some of them don't really have so much of a physical component, and some are a mixture. For instance, if you were to tune into your mouth, and in particular the hinges of your jaw, notice if there's a softness to that or if there's a kind of a clenching going on. Notice your experience when you tune into your mouth and your jaw. And it's really quite impossible to separate out a feeling of energy from the tightness of the muscles around it or something like that. So just notice what's happening in your mouth right now and in your jaw. If you could put a bit of space between your upper and lower jaw, that would change things. If you moved your jaw around a bit, relax the hinges of your jaw, it would feel different. And let's take a moment here to notice if there are any thoughts that are associated with this. We're just exploring, noticing what's going on. And if thoughts come in, notice where they come in. Now we're back to watching thought. Notice if it's pictures or primarily words. And unless it's something really engaging, we're not really wanting to pay attention so much to the thoughts right now. We're noticing more the pattern of it. Thoughts come in, what kind of content tends to really get our attention? What is it that we're thinking about when we notice that we've gotten involved in a train of thought? And notice the rest of the space that your body is occupying and what's going on in that space. And probably for most people, their attention didn't get drawn to their toes or their elbows or the back of their arm or something, unless there's something going on there. For most of us, our attention goes to some area of tightness or contraction or pain. So notice that that is a sensation. A tight muscle is a sensation. And then when we allow our shoulders to relax, it's a different sensation. When we release the tension in our jaw, move it around a bit, it changes the sensation. Notice your back of your neck, your shoulders, all of those large muscles of your upper back. Sometimes it feels like we can't really fully relax a part of our body, that we might soften it a little bit, and then a minute later we come back and it's all tight again. Kind of frustrating how that works. So tune into the back of your body and notice what's happening there. Are your shoulders relaxed? Is there any pain in your upper back or between your shoulder blades, maybe? And if you're lying down, see if you could really settle that. Let that whole area just release into the support of the bed or the floor, chair. And notice if there's energy there. Why is it here? Something really interesting to see about energy in our body. There's usually a reason. And sometimes when we tune into the energy, thoughts will come up, things that are associated with that energy. And sometimes we could even ask that energy just to settle a bit so that we could rest. Sometimes it's that habitual alertness for danger, some kind of vigilance that's keeping this tension here. And if that's the case, maybe we could allow that to soften a bit as we recognize that we don't really need that kind of energy, that level of vigilance. Sometimes that can be enough to allow a softening. And go back to noticing your breath. What's happening in that space? Working with the breath can be quite satisfying in a way because oftentimes the belly will really soften when we put our attention there. And when we kind of take our hands off of the breath, when we let the body breathe, all we really need to do that is to let it soften so that the diaphragm muscle can have room to work. So if there's something else in your body that's pretty interesting and you're looking at thoughts or something, continue to do that. That's fine. Otherwise, focus again on your breath at the navel center, noticing the rhythm of your breath, the movement of your body with your breath. And this time we're going to do a breathing practice. To start, we're going to count the length of the breath and see if we can allow the breath to be pretty even in length. So if you're inhaling to a count of 3, you would exhale to a count of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever your length of your breath is. Take it from the inhale and then see if you can match the exhale to that. And as you're doing that, focus on allowing your breath to be continuous so that your breath becomes very smooth. As you finish the exhale, everything settles, and then your body starts to breathe in. You inhale, and then your body breathes out. Everything softens again. Really focus on that continuity of your breath. Inhale, feel that expansion. Exhale, feel that release. About the same length on the exhale as the inhale. And then begin to let the exhalation extend a little bit more. So we're not bringing muscle tightness in on the exhale. We're just letting the exhalation continue a little longer. So, whatever your count is, if you're working with an inhale of 3, then you could begin to let the exhalation extend out to 4 or 5. It's really ideal if we can exhale at least 6 seconds. That gives our relaxation response a chance to really get going. It's hard to relax with a shorter breath. So don't get so much effort into it that it feels like a strain, but see if you could let your breath extend a little bit more. Inhale to your regular count of 3 or 4, whatever it is. And then exhale up to twice as long. Keep your attention focused on your breath. Let your belly soften as you breathe out. Keep a mental count in your mind. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale to 3. Nice deep inhale, and then let the breath go. Let yourself really focus on that count in your mind. Let your breath extend out to 6 seconds. And smoothly into the inhale, and then right into the letting go part. And then, if you want, you could continue the exhalation, the extended exhale breathing. Or you could just let your breath come back to a normal 1-to-1 pattern. And let yourself just rest there. There's not a lot to do right now with the mind. You might still be noticing your breath. You could be watching thoughts as they come and go. And put your attention directly again on the space. So, space shows up as space in and around our body and in and around sensation. It also shows up in the sense of time. So, as we're watching thoughts, there's a gap or silence between thoughts, the space between thoughts. So we could also look at that. And as you're watching, as thoughts come and go, and as sensations happen in your body, as your breath is happening as well, notice if there's a sense of who it is that's watching all of that. We're getting right into the witness or the observer. So we're obviously more than the thoughts in our mind, or we wouldn't be able to observe the thoughts. There's some higher level of the mind that's watching thought. And the same with our breath and with sensations in our body. Who is it that's watching and observing all of that? And we can't really answer that question in the way we could answer question of what color shirt does someone have on. But we can put our attention to it. Who is it that notices all of the experiences that we have? That notices the sense perceptions, that notices the breath. Turn your attention to that. And then let's look at the space again. This time, the space in which all of this is arising. So it's not just the space that our body is occupying, it's also the space that thought is coming and going in, the space that we're perceiving all of that. And notice if you can sense into something that never changes. Clearly, our bodies, our thoughts, all of that changes. It's in movement a lot of the time. And the observer or the witness is really paying attention to movement. And see if you could turn your attention towards that which doesn't move, which never changes. And notice that. And let your attention be drawn to what is changing, what is moving, noticing your breath, noticing the space your body is in, and the sense perceptions of that space. Noticing the witnessing, the observing that's happening, and that sense of who is it that observes all of this? If you think back to when you were 8 years old or 20 years old, some younger age, was it somebody different who was looking out of your eyes, or is there some sense of continuity there? Like obviously, we were different at that time, but is there something that's the same that hasn't changed? And we're going to move into a period of silence now. If you want to move about, you certainly could. If you want to sit or lie down and just continue to observe this, really notice what it is that you'd prefer to do right now. Something that would really be the best possible thing you could do right now. And allow yourself to do that. I'll check back in again in maybe 45 minutes or so. We'll do a bit more meditation before this session finishes. So do whatever is nourishing for you right now. Let yourself enjoy that. I'll continue to sit in silence with you too. So when you're ready, bring yourself out of the practice or back to the practice. If you're in a time zone where it's bed next, allow yourself to just get ready for bed and to drift into that in silence if you can. It's 1:45 here in Nova Scotia. So I'm going to sign off now and I'll be back. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.